Holly, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited to talk with you and see what we get into. I feel like I was already gonna start with your upbringing, maybe, because I feel like that will help lead us into everything else and give like the audience context too on where your background is, where you're coming from. But now I'm also curious because you just told me that you grew up in South Dakota, and I just want to know what it's like to grow up in South Dakota in
Yeah,
general.
absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely, I think there's like growing up in South Dakota and then there's growing up religious in South Dakota. And the
Tell
merger.
us both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up in Rapid City, South Dakota. It's the southwest corner of the state. So people think South Dakota, and I think they picture, I mean, maybe they picture like wheat fields and prairie, etc. And that is,
I'll tell you why I picture
okay, yeah,
it.
tell me what you picture.
Kind of just like, yeah, nothing, like barrenness and Native American reservations
Hmm.
and just like I think there's a motorcycle thing that happens.
Correct.
I only
Sturdy.
know that because my dad has gotten really into
Okay.
motorcycles in his older age and wanted to go.
Yep, got it. You should.
And so
Okay.
to me, it's just kind of like a land of nothing, but also it's very intriguing to me, both North and South Dakota, because I'm like, what's there? I've never
Yeah,
been
yeah.
there.
Fair. And they're big states, so it's like
Well,
obviously
there
there's
must be other things, but I don't
right,
know what they
right.
are.
So there is a lot of nothing. I divide the state by East River and West River. I'm from West River, which I call the best river, just like we call the West Coast the
Are
best
there two
coast.
rivers?
No, it's just like if you're on the west or eastern side of the state. And the eastern side of the state is a lot of what you're saying. It's very flat, very dry. Wheat, corn, alfalfa, like this is farm and ranch country. A lot of cattle, buffalo, things like that. The western portion of the state is actually like a extension of the Rocky Mountains. So it's hilly, a lot of like big rolling hills, tons of trees, lots of hiking, camping, like outdoor type stuff. If in South Dakota, I guess I'd be considered like a city girl because I'm from the second largest city in the state, Rapid City, which population I think is probably like 70,000 people, right? But that's like the second biggest city, okay? So kind of paint some context.
How did your family end up in South Dakota?
Been there forever. Like my parents, grandparents on both sides, like all went to like the same high schools. And I mean, just like my family's been there a really,
Do
really,
you know your history? Like, did someone from your family come and like settle and like go across to South Dakota, like in whatever year they did that?
yes. I don't know when my family landed in South Dakota. It seems like we trickled in. My family is from Germany, Sweden, and Ireland. So trickled in at some point. I know we were in Missouri, Iowa, and made our way into South Dakota farming. I know there was a lot of like farming history. Um, but nothing like in my immediate family. Like I have no experience with that. Like I had great grandparents that farmed and ranched, but that was not my
But
family.
someone in your family must have gone across, like done that trek when there was
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
I think that's so fascinating because, like, I know that on my dad's side, they kind of came in like the late 1600s and settled in like Massachusetts area. And then my mom's side was more recent and they came from Greece and they kind of came into New York and then stayed, like, but everyone stayed on the East Coast.
Right.
And I think it's very fascinating, these families that, like, went through so much more. Like,
Right.
there's a lot of
To
adventure
go
there
these
in
like
your
barren
heritage.
lands.
Yeah, to just like go across these lands and
Well, and I don't know like my family's specific story with that, but I do know that, a lot of immigrants were like really promised head to the Midwest. There's a ton of land. You can have 100 acres, for like a
yeah.
dollar. Like come on down. And so a lot of people settled in the Dakotas and Nebraska and Iowa because they were there were tons of language barriers, but it was like, come have land, big land, do what you want, build a farm, blah, blah, blah. And then they get there and realize, like, oh my
There's
God, we're
nothing.
gonna die. Like, we're never gonna make it through the winter. We have no shelter here. Like, we don't know how to work with cattle.
But they did it.
But they
And
did it.
now you exist,
And now I exist. Yeah. So
which is
that's a
crazy.
settling in the Midwest is wild. And there's a lot of history in and around where I grew up. So I grew up about 25 minutes from Deadwood. So we all kind of know like the stories of Deadwood and the wild, wild west there. So like Deadwood,
What
oh
is
man, so
Deadwood?
think like Wild Bill Hickok and Annie Oakley, like
Oh, like the, yeah, with the guns and the,
yeah,
yeah.
when you think of like Saloon Town, like it's still like that. Like you go to Deadwood and it's like old school saloons and has this very like cowboy feel. It's like a fun place to go like drink and gamble when you first turn 21 because you're like, yeah, Deadwood, this is so cool.
Now I'm like maybe when Jordan and I we weren't gonna drive across to the East Coast, but now I'm like maybe we should drive and we should go
Go
to
to South
the
Dakota.
northern United States.
It's pretty cool whenever I meet people that, like, oh, you're from South Dakota. I road tripped through there once. I saw XYZ. It was so cool. Because there are like these little landmark things to come across that are fun. Which I think also made it a fantastic place to grow up. So safe, like from a time and space where, it was that vibe of it's also generational, but it was just so safe of like, yeah, kids went out on their bikes and rode around all day every day until the streetlights came on and you went home for dinner. It was just a very safe, free place to grow up.
How old are
And
you?
how old am I? I'm 40. I'm
Okay.
40. Yeah. So yeah, grew up in, late 80s and 90s as a kid there and there's a lot, I guess, to do as a there's not a lot to do growing up. We could talk about teen years, but as a little kid, there's so much to do because I guess it's just really felt very community oriented in that way. Families got together and there, lots of parks and kids activities and fun like kitschy tourist stuff. I grew up right
Yeah.
down the hill from Mount Rushmore and
Oh.
so there's just like a lot of like weird touristy things like that.
See, this is interesting to me because I would have seen it as more scary. Like I wouldn't have seen it
Mm,
as safe. I would have been like, "Oh, is it just like barren and
like rugged
Wild
and
West?"
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
But
yeah.
what you're describing is different.
Yeah, yeah. Looking back now and how I picture in my mind's eye, it's like very small neighborhoods. Everybody knows each other. There's neighborhood block parties every summer. All the streets are blocked off and all the kids go and play and all the parents hang out. Like, it was it was a town,
Yeah.
60, 70,000 people. It's not big, but it's not tiny. So, it's community. Um, I always felt really safe. I guess that's how I always like looking back, and especially now living in Seattle, I see how different it is for kids here. They don't get to just, kids don't really just get to go out and ride their bikes around their neighborhoods freely in a lot of places without their
But do you
parents.
think,
Right.
like, is it still that way where you grew up? Like, have they
Yeah.
held on to that? Because I feel like a lot, like, I feel like I grew up playing outside and
Hmm.
feeling pretty safe, but now it probably isn't quite
Is
that
less.
safe.
I do still get the sense that it is that way. I have a lot of friends there that have kids and, a lot of my family is still there. So I do get the sense that it still is that way. There's probably now more like that's a part of town we don't go to
Okay.
versus, where there wasn't as much of that when I was growing up. Like, yeah, there were like nicer areas. You could definitely see like how the wealth would trickle through certain neighborhoods and stuff, but there wasn't anything that was like scary, scary.
What's the weather like in South Dakota? You
Um,
get a lot of snow?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We did growing up tons of snow days, like piling up outside the door. Long winters, like first snow in October is not uncommon. Like we're trick or treating in October, like with like coats and hoodies and hats over our Halloween costumes because it's freezing. And then winter ends in April. You
Yeah.
might get a snowstorm in May, and then spring is like May, June. You get 2 months of summer, and then you're into fall in September. It's kind of like, but the summers are, hot and humid and beautiful. Winters are cold and long and harsh. Sub-zero temps and wind and yeah, that was why I left was I don't want this weather. It's not for me.
There is such a toss up. When we decided to move to the States, we considered like every state, and we were like, it was just like I was kind of thinking of all the states and all the things I knew, and I was just like, yeah, there's such pros and cons to every place.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, some of these cons, I don't know if I could do. Like, it was just, but it was kind of sad because, like, for a little, it's gonna sound ridiculous, but part of me was like, I was like looking at the, and then I was like, maybe I'll move to Nebraska. Like, maybe we'll just like go to Nebraska and get, I've never been to Nebraska. I was like, well, in like
Yeah.
prairies and we'll get lots of land. And then I was reading forums and they were like, it's really windy here all the time. And I was like, I don't know if I could.
Yeah, wind is one of my least desirable weather conditions.
Yeah, I was just like, but there are pros and cons everywhere. So it's like you have to
Mhm.
kind of figure. Because
It's
even when I
hard.
was in California, I was like, I hate this. It's sunny all the time.
Right.
Like, that was also
Monotonous.
terrible to me.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I know. I'm with you there. Like Seattle's temporary for us for a few years, and so we're in that game too of like, well, what do we desire? Like climate is a big driver, but like cost of living, what we can where how far our dollar will stretch, obviously, but climate's big because right, I don't want heat and sun 24/7, and I don't want 7 months of winter. Like that's
I don't want to be in like tornadoes or
I don't
like
really want that
some
either.
of these
Yeah.
things I'm like maybe if you grew up with them you might feel more comfortable. I don't know, but like for me
Yeah.
I'm like I grew up in Pennsylvania. There was no threats of any sort of natural disaster really.
Right. Yeah, not a thing.
I'm like I don't know if I want to deal with like being in tornado country or like
Yeah, that's dicey too, or like flood country or hurricane country. There's so many things to consider. Like, I don't. Lots of place I'd vacation but not live.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in the same boat.
it is challenging. It was funny because I did not think I loved growing up in Pennsylvania, but after considering everything, I was like, I feel like I actually grew up in a pretty good place overall.
Yeah,
I don't want to go back exactly to there, but it still was just like Pennsylvania is the kind of nice state to grow up in.
yeah, same. I mean, I think growing up in South Dakota was fantastic, especially looking back now that I'm like out of teenage years and left. And when I'm there, sometimes, especially like in the summers, they're so beautiful. I'm like, oh, I could be here. And then the second I leave, I'm like, oh my God, no, there's no way I would ever move back here ever. It's like kind of stuck in the past in a lot of ways. And yeah, I don't know. I just wouldn't for many reasons, I think. But
Is that
I
what
don't, I
prevents
don't like
you?
I don't like revisiting old versions of myself is probably the bigger driver. I think it would be really hard for me to be who I am now and continue to grow into the future, being constantly reminded of older versions of myself that I worked hard to shed and leave behind.
That's interesting. I wonder if that's part of what I feel about Pennsylvania. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania. And to me it just felt quite depressing in a lot of ways. Although there was there's a lot of things to appreciate about it that I did not when I was a teenager. I mean when you're a
Right.
teenager, I was just like I want out of here. Why would anyone choose to live here?
Exactly.
But
Teenage years are, yeah, it's a different perspective. I think it's hard to judge anything based on how you experienced it from like 13 to 18 because
no, you can't. But I do get I don't know. I feel a toss up. I also feel a bit of sadness that we are moving away from that though, like where we stay near our families.
I feel that too.
Because like culturally, a lot of us have just done like families are just split apart in all different
Hmm.
places because everyone's like, oh, we can live where we want. We want to live in a place that we like. And that's been a big consideration for us getting ready to start a family is like, oh, like what really matters? Like right now, I feel like we live in the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. Like I just am stunned every day by like, wow, it's gorgeous. But I've also been forced to reconsider. I'm like, is that really my number one value though? And I've found myself like, I'm really close with my older sister, and I'm like, I kind of want to go live near her. And she's in Delaware. And I'm like, I don't know if I like anything about Delaware, but I want to be close to her, you
Right.
know? So it's like, yeah, I don't
That's
know. But
really
it's
good.
sad. And I couldn't even go back. My family's so split in different states all over the place that I couldn't even go back if I wanted to like a place where everybody was.
Yeah, that's an important point, and especially as you said, as you're like family planning, that's a big deal. Like
Mm.
I have a stepdaughter. I don't have children of my own, and I don't plan to have children of my own, but I think there would be something very different for me in my consideration of where we live if I did.
Mhm.
Partly because I would just feel very sad about robbing my parents from a grandparent experience, honestly, like, and my child from having a grandparent experience, because I think I had such amazing, all my family was around me when I grew up, like aunts,
Yeah.
uncles, cousins, everyone was there, and that was really, really cool for me. And now my brother was on the West Coast for a long time, but is living back in the Black Hills right now as well. And I think part of our goal is, okay, when will we meet up? Like, where will be the place that we can live so we can be next to each other? Like, both of our brains are in that zone of like, all right, like 3 hours or less. Like, we have to figure out how we can drive
Yeah.
to each other. That's so important for us as we're like getting older.
Yeah.
Uh,
So tell me about your Christian upbringing side.
oh, okay. So, um, I have young parents. My parents were high school sweethearts. They got married after my dad graduated. So my mom's a year older. She was um, 21 when they got married. He was 20. And neither of my parents grew up in religious households. I think my dad definitely no. There was not really any kind of like God-based component in his upbringing at all. My mom, I think there was kind of like a in casual conversation, like, well, God's watching kind of a thing, but not, there wasn't really any practice around that. As my mom tells it, she found God um watching a Billy Graham concert. Do you know who Billy Graham is? Have you come across? Okay,
Yeah.
so he's like a big televangelist throughout the 90s. Like think like you can probably picture this a little bit like on TV, like big mega church and guy with a big headset preaching to massive audiences, like evangelizing to the world. And he was really famous for this. I don't know anything other than that about him. Just that's kind of like the guy, Billy Graham. Um, and she something about hearing him speak spoke to her, and so she kind of became a Christian at this point and really started like going to church, exploring Christianity, like all the just and we pray and blah blah blah, I tithe, etc. Kind of just bought into like a general introductory format of Christianity, I guess. And so I was born into this. I can't really I have my impressions of how my parents differed on that path. I don't know what it was like in the beginning for them and how like my dad was introduced to Christianity. I don't know today if my dad would say he's a Christian. My mom would.
What
So
kind of Christian church was it?
um when I, primarily my entire life we went to a non-denominational evangelical Christian church.
Okay.
So it was not like affiliated with any, I wouldn't say there was like a specific formula or set of belief systems that you would assign to like being Baptist or other stuff like that. Like it was,
Evangelical comes from Protestant, right? Or no?
yeah, I think so.
Like it's an off, it comes from Protestant because,
I think so. And I think that word maybe is used today to describe churches that perhaps feel, I've been to a lot of churches as well. That was a part of a school project I had to do. I'll tell you about that. But I want to say it felt a little definitely not secular. That's not the right word, but I would say casual. Like we had a rock band that played the church music in the morning, like drums and guitar. Like it was cool. It
right.
felt, like you didn't have to dress up. You could show up to church in jeans and a t-shirt or in your work clothes or whatever. It wasn't like
Got it.
it was meant to be informal and welcoming of all types was the consensus. So that was the church we went to pretty much my whole life. I think maybe we went somewhere else when I was very little. I don't really remember. But my first memory of, I'm sure I went to Sunday school and like there were, little lessons about God. And my mom, of course, who is a teacher, also took it, she was a teacher by profession for many, many years, but also, took it upon her to teach me about the Bible and God-based, kid-based language. But I have a very, very specific memory sitting on the kitchen floor of the house I grew up in. And I'm little, I want to say 4. I think my mom confirmed that for me once. And I remember very specifically saying to my mom, I want to ask Jesus into my heart. And so we like sit on the kitchen floor, and I remember she like helped me pray, like to ask for forgiveness of my sins and to ask Jesus to come and live in my heart and protect me so that I can go to heaven. Like I can picture it like super, super crystal clear. And she was so excited, right? Like I got, you know, it wasn't ever like I mean, I'm little, right? Like I brought this to attention, I'm pretty sure. I want Jesus to live in my heart because she talked about Jesus living in her heart. But I remember what a celebration this was, right? Like she was so happy, like, because I had been saved.
Mhm.
I'm going to heaven. Granted, I'd already been baptized, which I think, was pretty much my ticket. But,
That's what I was gonna ask. Okay?
yeah, I had been baptized, but I'd been baptized in a Presbyterian church. I remember that now, the church my parents got married in. But this was like, I had made a personal devotion to God. I'm 4 years old, 5 years old, maybe. I'm on the path now. Like I committed myself.
Okay.
So I went to Christian schools starting in kindergarten. My elementary school was kindergarten to sixth grade. My mom was actually a teacher there for a lot of years too, which I think is why I went there because we got discounted tuition. My family did not grow up with very much money, paycheck to paycheck at best on a good month was kind of how we grew up.
Okay.
So the thought of spending money to go to a Christian school was just like, not, I don't know how they pulled that off, honestly. Even though I think it was like, I asked one time, I think it was like $2,000 a year. Like nothing. But like, hey man, when you can't, when you're trying to pay your bills, that's extra money.
Yeah.
When I could go to public school. So I went there kindergarten through sixth grade. And I have no like, this was normal to me. I didn't know anything different. I didn't know anything about school being different. Classes were small. The school was in a church. My grades had probably 15, 20 kids in them. We went to church on Sundays at our separate church, but then there was like school church once a week, I think. It was called chapel at my high school. I don't know what it was called here, but basically it was like one day that would just be kind of church and it would be all Bible focused. And then, we did normal other school stuff throughout the week and math and English and whatever. I remember every morning we would stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, the Pledge of Allegiance to the Christian flag, and the Pledge of Allegiance to the Bible. So that was like how we would start every day.
What is the Christian flag?
It's white, and I think there's a blue square in the corner with a red cross. I think this is how I'm remembering back to
Do
childhood
you
brain.
remember the Christian pledge? Is it similar to like the Pledge of Allegiance?
Um, yeah, kind of. It's like same cadence and like length. Like I pledge allegiance to the Christian flag and God's truth for which it stands. Or like,
Oh,
it's literally
interesting.
like,
Okay.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is kind of like, and I don't know where that like started, I don't know if that's a thing or if my school did, I don't
I've
know.
never heard of that before, but that's really interesting.
Yeah, no idea.
Okay.
But I remember stuff like there was a lot of study in the Bible. We had memory verses every week, so everybody got to pick a memory verse every week and we would have to recite it. So I always remember practicing at the dinner table. Um, or part of like Bible classes would be like memorizing the books of the Bible and it would be like a game or like turn it into a song. Like I still remember like I don't remember the Old Testament entirely, but the New Testament was like quippy. It's like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Acts and the letters to the Romans, First and Second Corinthians, Galatians and Ephesians. Like I can, those were fun games, like stuff
Uh-huh.
like that. Um, that all felt really fun to me as a kid because I loved God and all my friends loved God, and that was like really safe. I have one memory of being in, I guess, elementary school that made God scary. And this was the first time I felt scared about God. Have you ever heard of hell houses?
No.
Okay. So I'll tell you what those are. I experienced a light version of Hell House, fortunately, but Hell Houses are put on around Halloween time. They're like haunted houses for Christian kids. I don't know what denomination puts these on.
Not sound
No,
good.
it's not good.
Already.
I have friends that experienced this. They would go every Halloween. I had an old roommate. One time I brought this up. I was like, "Oh my God, I had this memory about something." I started talking about it and he just like turned white. He's like, "Oh my God, I've been to those." So what they are, this is horrible, Demetra. It's terrible. You experience this like it's like a haunted house, but every room is a cardinal sin. And the cardinal sin is being acted out in a really scary way. So like picture a teen girl on a table giving birth. She got like knocked up by her high school boyfriend, having a baby out of wedlock, and the devil's there to take the baby's soul the second it's born. This is being acted out in front of you. Okay, so the lesson is don't have premarital sex. Okay. Um, or like a man dying of AIDS on a hospital bed and the devil is there to take his soul. He has AIDS because he was a homosexual and contracted AIDS through gay sex. Um, all of I know.
Wait, I just don't. This
Okay.
has got to be. Where does this? This is only a. Is this an evangelical thing? What is this?
I think this is, I want to say this is like originated as like a Southern Baptist thing. This is like intense Christianity somewhere. There's a big church. I'll send you a link about this just so you can look later. Because when I remembered this, I started researching it because I'm like, holy shit, did I just like black out that I knew about this? Um, there's almost like a little chain of these. So a friend of mine had experienced those growing up in, I want to say Texas. So like probably a Southern Baptist kind of environment. And it's meant to scare teenagers into purity and behavior and not to sin.
But this
I
just sounds like a terrible idea, and
Oh,
it
it's
sounds.
horrible. What a
It sounds also. It also feels like it could be a very good cover for abuse in ways.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes with these things, but it's terrible. I mean, it's like psychological. I don't know. But I think also that it was pitched as fun,
Okay.
which is weird. Okay, so I did not go to a hell house. I saw like a play.
Okay.
So I must have been, I don't know, in fourth, fifth, or sixth grade at this point. And this was at my elementary school. And it was a play. It was a lighter version of this. It wasn't like crazy, scary demon music and lasers and all this like weird, tense stuff. But there was, like, I remember a simulated car accident and the person had been drinking and they like got in a car accident and died. And there was like the cops came to like investigate the scene and there's pill bottles and alcohol bottles and all of this stuff. And then a bunch of like dark angels came and swooped the body and took him to hell because he was like a drug addict and alcoholic or something. I remember that scene. Um and then there was another one of like a man that beat his wife. It was like spousal abuse or something. And I can't remember what the like he got punished for that. He didn't get taken to hell, but he got something happened like he got in a bad accident and like was paralyzed or something because he was being punished by God. Which that one was that's a different take. Like I get the like okay, we're talking about heaven and hell and sinners, but this one was punishment, right? So now the idea of like punishment, disobey and God will take your legs or you know what I mean? I don't know. Like obviously don't beat your wife. That's a clear
Yeah.
we know that. But that was the first time I got scared of God because it started to sink into me. Like I definitely knew stuff like don't be a sinner or you risk going to hell, which was confusing because I thought that I'd been saved forever because I asked Jesus into my heart. So the indoctrination the groundwork had been laid. My world was very small. This was where I was growing up. My friends went to Christian school or church. Those were the people I hung out with. And this was also being reinforced in my home, but in a way lighter way. Like my house was not like we'd pray before dinner and stuff, but like my parents weren't like, you're a sinner or that's a sin, or it wasn't I didn't feel like that at home. I never felt like extreme indoctrination at home. But you know, you're a kid, you spend all your time at school
Yeah. And with your friends,
and with your friends.
with
Yeah.
what they believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was elementary school. But again, nothing about this was weird. I was a kid. I was still, you know, 6th, 13, 12, 13. So the next school I went to was a 7th through 12th grade school. So that's where I would finish, where I was supposed to finish the rest of school. I did end up getting expelled. Get to that. Um, but I, you know, seventh through 12th grade was obviously a little bit different, right? I'm starting to be a teenager. I want to do stuff. I'm starting to make friends outside of my school because I was really athletic. I was super into soccer, and we didn't have a soccer team at this small school, so I was allowed to play soccer at the big high school in town. They let me come play on their team. So, you know, I'm starting to make friends outside of just my small universe. And I'm starting to have friends in my school too that are also kind of like feeling the same way I am, which just general rebellion. Let's smoke cigarettes and try beer, you know, just the
Yeah.
stuff that starts to happen. So I'm doing all of these things, and I'm going through natural teenage stuff, starting to question, which that's kind of a big no in Christianity, which I loved your article about wokeness is a cult.
Yeah.
I really, really liked, because that ultimately was one of the I wanted to reach out to you after that, but I didn't until I saw your next post, which is when I reached out to you and you started talking about loving Jesus. Because those two tied so much to me, because every single one of your 9 points, I could list multiple subpoints under each one that put Christianity into the cult category.
The
So I was like,
Christianity you grew up in.
the Christianity I grew up in. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. The Christianity I grew up in. And so I was like, okay, like, and I know that the way that I grew up where I'm from, this is very common. Like, this is not how all Christians grew up. I totally get that. I know not all Christians really believed in true heaven and hell, like actual fire, the devil is real. I did grow up that way. A lot of the people that I grew up with did grow up that way. Like, this was truth.
Yeah.
Um, so questioning this authority was not welcome. Um, we started taking pretty in-depth Bible courses and religion courses in high school. Old Testament survey, New Testament survey, New World religions. Like, we were encouraged to research other religions, from the lens of, let's point out all the ways these people are wrong, right?
Mm.
They like wanted us to learn how to build a case against other people's belief systems.
But you're not allowed to question the validity of your own.
Yeah, it
Like
really
if you're
felt
like
like,
this passage in the Bible, like I don't know if I agree, or like this
yeah,
other, like what about other sects of Christianity that might interpret it differently? Like, are you
right.
able to talk about
Yeah,
that or no?
yes. Other sects through Christianity, not really a big deal there. It was kind of like a, yeah, it's interpreted this way or whatever. But nonetheless, the Bible is the word of God and it is absolute truth. And to question God means you don't have faith, which means you don't actually believe in God. It would just like spiral from there. So I was questioning things. I did have questions. I was starting to research. I think when I was a junior, it was the course where we explored other religions. And part of what I decided to do was go just check out all the churches in my town, because there were a lot of different types of denominations and churches I'd never been to. And I wanted to go to this one that people had told me about, where it was more like considered like an ecstatic church. Like, there was a lot of song and dance, people were speaking in tongues. And I wanted to check that out because I'd never been to a church like that. So one night I went, there was like a guest pastor that was visiting. And I was like, oh, okay. It's like, I think this had almost been advertised to me somehow. I don't know how else I would have heard about this. I don't know where though. But I go to this church. It's an evening practice. And I get there. I'm with a couple of friends. A couple of my friends that were also in the class with me decided to go. And at one point, the pastor calls you up to, he wants to pray over you and forgive you of your sins, which the Christianity I grew up in, it's not like Catholicism, right? There's no real confession. Like, we don't go confess. However, I was used to confessing sins publicly because that was a part of church, and chapel is what my like school church was called. They would often ask you to come up and confess your sins and recommit your life to God. That was a big thing. Like, if you're
Publicly confessing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
among your peers, and recommit your life to God, which, like, I've been born again so many times I've lost count. Like, the amount of times that I have done that kind of a thing. Um so I go up. I'm like, he's like, come up here if you want to be, blessed or whatever. I don't remember his language. So I get up on the stage and line up, and everybody's lined up, and there's like, I remember tambourines playing. There's some music going. It's starting to get like lively. Like the crowd is clapping now. Everybody's like, woo, yeah, you're all getting blessed. And this pastor is like walking by, and he's putting his hand over you, and he's got a Bible in front of him and tells you, put your hand on the Bible. He's putting his hand on your forehead and praying for you, and then he taps you. And everybody, you fall back. Oh God, I've been cleansed. And there's somebody behind you that's catching you. And I'm like seeing this happen, and I'm just like, what the fuck is happening right now? And I'm watching my friends do this. I'm like, okay. So he gets to me, and I'm just like, am I gonna fall back? And like, what is about to happen to me? And he taps me on my forehead, and I'm just kind of like, no. And I just look at him, and he's looking at me like waiting for me. And nothing happens. And he whispers in my ear, come and see me after. And he moves on. And I'm just like, okay. And I went and talked to him at the side of the stage, and he asked me about myself. Are you a Christian young lady? I was like, mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm like, I'm about as Christian as they come. Like, I am a believer. You know what I mean? Like, I live this truth day in and day out. And he's like, I don't think that you are. Your faith is resisting God's love. It gives me this spiel because I made him look bad.
Ugh.
Like, I made him look bad. And I hated that. That was a really big catalyst for me of like, God, this gross misuse of power
Yeah.
and pretending that you speak for God. It really, really grossed me out. It really hurt me because I did have faith and I really was a practicing Christian. And things started getting weird in my life around then because I did generally have the energy of questioning my teachers, questioning my parents, questioning anybody that was just like seemingly on a path of not questioning it. It was like, well, everything's been figured out. We got this Bible. We know what God and Jesus are all about. So like, let's just cruise control through religion. And I was like, but what about these thoughts I'm having? And it got pretty uncomfortable. Parents started calling my parents and saying, your daughter has my son asking questions about XYZ and if there is an afterlife and all this stuff. So my parents are getting complaints about me. The school's getting complaints about me. My friends' parents are starting to alienate their kids from me because I'm starting to now I'm just like, well, fuck this. I'm starting to really be like, I hate it here. I feel like very like people are looking at me now a lot more, and I did not like that at all. I
Yeah.
did not want to be seen that way. I just wanted to be able to think freely.
Yeah.
So I got called into the office at one point with my parents in my junior year. I had a really tough year. A good friend of mine died in a car accident that year, and she also went to school with me. Nobody was nice to her. She had been held back a grade, and had been getting in some trouble at her public school. So her parents sent her to the Christian school to straighten her out. There were like a lot of those kids there. And
Mm.
everybody was really mean to her. Until she died. And then all of a sudden everyone was like, oh, Erin, we loved, she was amazing, and I called bullshit. I stood up during the school assembly and I was like, none of you liked her. You were all so mean to her. And I was just
You
really,
said that?
yeah, I was really upset.
Good for you.
It was shortly after this. The principal told me he didn't think that I was like good alumni material for this school. Basically, like, we don't want you in our catalog as a graduate here. And said he thought I'd probably be more comfortable if I finished my senior year at a different school. So I'd gone to school with these same kids, kindergarten through 11th grade. It's my entire world, my whole universe. And I get expelled and have to go to the biggest high school in the state where I know nobody.
I need to
So
pause you. I'm just like, wow. It's like it's making me tear up because I'm just like imagining. I really relate to your spirit at that age. Like, um, just being so questioning and being so truth oriented and like, hey, you're all bullshitting. I don't like it like this. And I'm just I can imagine the feeling of that being so shut down and looked down upon by everyone around you and what that must have felt like. And
Yeah, hurtful at a time when you're trying to figure yourself out, you're trying to figure the world out. And again, like I really did believe, like I really was a Christian, like I really did have a path, like I really internalized my sins and I really worked hard to correct them.
Yeah.
And then I was also just being a normal teenager, which was in like direct opposition of like the world I was told I needed to live in to be a good person that God would love.
Yeah.
So it was just, and it would have been one thing if it was like my teachers, but once it started being like other parents calling my mom,
Yeah.
and I could see like she's worried, she's defending me at every turn, but like this hurt her. Of course she was
Yeah.
worried. She's like, fuck. I
No.
remember one time this woman called and told my mom I was on a fast track to hell. And how could she, like, in good conscience, raise a child this way? And I think that really, really hurt. I mean, of course, her mama bear kicked in and she was like,
Yeah.
but I think that hurt her because she probably did think, did I do, like, it's like affected us in a way. Um,
I think also to me this is like such the evil part of the cultiness of things, like when the cult mind gets in, because like to me your experience, a lot of your experience is culty in ways, but then like that experience you had with that guy is extremely culty, and actually is funny how it reminds me of my cult experience, like my spiritual cult experience, because like, and I never really thought about it, but it's very similar the way you describe him, like putting the hand on everyone's head. And I can kind of picture that. And it reminded me, I actually had an experience in Georgia, in Savannah. I was on a little trip and I was on this ferry, and these two boys came up to me. I was pretty young, I was in my early 20s. And they were like, sister, sister. Like, they had been newly born again. They were saved, they were addicts and had been addicts, and they were like, can we like give you the Holy Spirit? I don't know what they said, something, and I was like, sure. Like, I was just
yeah.
like, who are these weird guys? And they put their hands on me and they like shook and they were like, oh, here goes. And I was like, what is happening? And then the one was like, can I give you my Bible? And I was like, yes. And I took it and then I left. I was like, that was funny. I never read it. I never like did anything about, but I was, and so I can like picture that. But in the spiritual cult I was in, this woman did things like I had that she would do these motions like this, like, and for people who are listening, it was like, I don't know, like snapping and like moving your hands forward and like these energetic things she
Like
was doing.
move energy or something, or like,
Yeah, it was like her shamanness of thing, like
yeah,
energetic
yeah.
things she had
Walking
learned how to
in.
do. She was
Yeah.
been gifted, uh and we had, and I've thought about this many times because we had about 2 years in, it was my like I don't know what to call it. She has these like yearly events, and it was sort of like almost like a graduation type of ceremony where uh you get to do your speech essentially, and
Right.
like what, and it's very religious actually in this way where it's like it builds up because you see other people doing it in the years prior and you watch them being taken over by the feminine or this energy, and it just, you're not allowed to, you don't prepare anything ahead of time. It's like the energy just takes over, and when it's your turn to speak you just are taken over and you speak. And in the years prior, like when I would listen to some people, I would just bawl and like it was like, wow. It was like, and
Yeah.
uh and so before it was my turn to speak, she did the thing that she would do with everyone. And I was like, oh, I was like crying. And I was like, and what's weird is like, I thought I was feeling it. Like, I was just so convinced because I saw everyone else. But what I think is not meant, like, when you see everyone else doing it, you almost have to, I mean, you didn't, you were, and it was your first experience there, but you were just like, no. But it's so tempting to just like, you want to feel it, you want to go along even subconsciously. And so I felt like I was really feeling it, and I actually got mad at Jordan because he kind of made fun of it at one point. Like, he was just like, oh, the feminine, like these things, and I was like, you don't understand the feminine. And I was like, you're not respecting it, you don't get it. And then I did my thing, and I cried, and everybody cried, and it was so powerful. And I've thought about that often because I think I don't know what energies are coming through there. I do not think that it's God. I just think I was open to a lot of weird stuff, and I also don't know that all of it was even real. Like
Right.
uh I think it's really easy to like get pulled into this, like you think you're experiencing all this stuff and not be. And anyway, it reminds me a lot of that because and then of course when you didn't do it, it was like what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And clearly coming from embarrassment of his, but like that's such a like big cult red flag of like you're not doing the thing everyone else is doing and feeling the energy, so you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and had I, I never saw this man again or anything like that. Had I known him or had that happened at my school, maybe I would have reacted differently because I would have been a different environment. But, I was only there with two or three other friends of mine. And yeah, I didn't know this guy. I didn't, so I didn't owe him an obedience, you know. At school, it might have been like something completely different. But yeah,
But
again, like I very much recognize that the Christianity I'm telling you about and the way that I was raised is not who God is. I don't believe, I don't believe that's who God is. And I think that there are other beautiful facets of religion, but I think that there are a lot of people that were raised this way and also maybe just didn't take it as seriously as I did or weren't as invested in then once I did leave that school, um, start breaking it down and moving into the other side of thought and really start trying to put together facts and find information. I'd been spoon-fed truth my whole life. Like I just, okay, this is how it is, about everything. Like, we didn't even just like looking back at our curriculum, like the science classes that I grew up learning, I don't even know where they got the textbooks I must have learned from because we didn't teach about evolution. We left out a lot about science. We left out a lot about history. I think probably the only true education I got was in like math and English on par with my peers because my school taught me whatever fit the agenda of the version of God that I needed to be served.
yeah.
I had like a lot of learning to do. Like I think in a certain way, I might have like been a bit of a late bloomer in life because I grew up in such a very small kind of world in that way.
The other thing that stands out to me in this is like, and that is the other evil part of it that I was talking about, is like there was this tenderness in your own heart, like this innocence where you really felt it and really trusted, like you had this faith and this relationship, and then the way that all these people around you acted, which is to me the quite like evil culty like
Yeah.
darkness, where it's like you can't question and you can't, and now you're bad, and now you're, everyone's looking at you like you're doing something wrong and you're the, and what it ended up doing was crushing that like tender innocent faith,
Yeah.
not entirely because I know you've like you've had your own relationship with it change, and but like it was intact, and you like believed and trusted that connection, and then it was like they took that away.
Oh yeah.
And that was kind of, that was the most crushing thing for me in my cult experience, even though I now don't really think I had all the way found it anyway, but I did have this like this innocence and trust and faith in a connection, at least to something that I'd always felt that was good.
Right.
And then when that happened and I left, it just felt like that was the worst part about the whole experience for me, was that it like crushed that. Like it took that away from me. And like my connection to that had always been such a huge part of my life.
Which would you think too that then that was your catalyst to wanting to learn more about Jesus or Christianity?
I think the catalyst for me was when I left the cult. I had been so in these like new age spiritual worlds for most of my 20s. It was like very tantric in this way of like there's no good and bad, there's no evil, there's no like everything is one and non-dual. Like that was the cool thing was like and and I'd been teaching that to people. Like I was like, yeah, I really believe that. I was like, yeah. And then when I saw the cult leader for who she was and I sort of like it all crumbled, I was like, this is evil. And it was even more evil. Oh, I could still cry about it because it's so like, it is so, it's extra evil when it masquerades as good. Like it pretends to be good and it looks
Sheep's
good
clothing, yeah.
and it tricks you and it's like I am like the thing you've been looking for and then it's all a deception and a lie and it's like because at least if something's evil and you see on the surface it's evil
Right.
you're like yeah that's evil but when it's evil and it's pretending to be a good beautiful pure light thing it's like extra evil I think and so for me there was this just like whoa, like I actually there is a line and I know it. And I've always had this sense of like kind of like an oversensitive sense of justice, like of like injustice, like right and wrong. And like you, I was very like as a child, as a teenager, very quick to point out this is wrong. These people are not telling the truth. This is
Right.
unfair. This is what and I just couldn't it like just crumbled my whole world because it shattered everything. It made me be like, whoa, there is evil and this is evil. And how could I have been so tricked? And then I didn't immediately I wasn't like, oh, Christianity's right, but it I had been making fun of Christianity. Like I was like Christianity's so stupid. I'm so much better than Christianity. And then when I had that experience, I was like, oh, this is what they mean. Because up until then, I hadn't really understood what was meant by like Satan or the devil, or like, I was like, I thought that Christian, the same way I kind of thought, like, oh, they think God's a man in the sky. I was like, oh, they just think like the
Stereotype.
devil is this creature and how stupid to be scared of the devil. And then
Mhm.
I was like, oh, this is what they mean.
I wonder too, when you say that, like, obviously, this woman that led this cult, there's no universe in which she thinks she's evil, you know? Like,
Of course
there's,
not.
there's no part of her that probably thinks, I'm doing something nefarious,
Well,
but
no,
I'm disguising it as good. Like,
I do think that.
you do? Because that's what I wondered too about. Same thing, like, when it's like, so clearly you're like, this is fucked up and wrong and culty or whatever. It's like, is there any part of her that is doing this for personal gain, or does she just think like I'm fine, she's wrong?
I
What
don't
about that?
know for sure, of course, the
Yeah.
answer, but I believe to me it seems like there's kind of a spectrum of narcissists.
Hmm.
Some who are just really narcissistic and they genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
And they cause people pain, but they're not really malicious. They're just like really narcissistic. And then it seems like there's a whole kind of spectrum of how like psychopathic someone can be. And I believe that she is a psychopath. Like I think that she genuinely believes some of the things. Like I do think she's delusional and thinks that she's like a goddess and whatever. I don't think she knows that she's making that up.
I mean, and yeah.
But I do believe that and I have a lot of evidence for like I think that there's a lot of malicious intent where like she knows what she's doing. She knows it's abusive to people cuz I barely experienced any of that to me. For me it was more the manipulation and the deception, but like I've since talked to so many other women who have had like really abusive relationships with her. And I'm like like this person knows. And that was also the thing for me was like whoa, there are people. It was seems so naive now, but I was just like, there are people who actually they don't feel empathy in the same way I do. They don't have the same kind of conscience that I do. And that led me into like learning a lot about narcissists, and just because I had thought like anyone who talked about narcissists was just, I would like rolled my eyes at them. I was like, everybody is just calling everyone a narcissist. What even does that mean? And then I was like, oh my God.
Legit thing, yeah.
And then it was just like, and it's a big percentage. I think I read it's like 5% of the population or something. And
See?
that's a big percentage of people who genuinely like they don't feel in the same way.
Yeah.
And that is so
Which is
terrifying.
like sociopathic behavior too, like trying to be normal, inability to feel those normal range of emotions for others. Like, yeah, yeah. I think that too about some, I mean, I had some teachers that were fantastic, and I've had some pastors that were great, and some that for sure were narcissists,
Yeah.
and fit that view big time, and like God speaks through me. I'm like, that was always a really big one for me, because that's a foundation that you just aren't supposed to question if God speaks through you.
Yeah.
And that's also something in the spiritual community that I don't like, that in the religious community where humans think they're speaking on behalf of God. I don't like that.
Mhm.
But I really hate it in the spiritual community too, because you hear it a lot as, well, I channeled this.
Me too.
That, there's so many parallels across all of, like, if I mean, spirituality is a huge just bucket. There's lots of things that we could break that down into, but same with like religion, you could break that down into so many things. But there are all these common threads when we talk about language. I feel like, it's like same impulse, different dialect in a lot of ways, like whether you're praying versus manifesting, or yeah, receiving these direct messages from God, or channeling this spiritual insight. In religious communities, talking about God's chosen people versus like, gosh, you could branch that off into spirituality in so many ways with star seeds and activating your DNA and just, so I think what I like, and what you had pointed out too when I reached out to you, is how we almost started at different ends of the spectrum, and it seems like we're kind of starting to overlap.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know where the overlap will go or which way, and neither do we, right? But
Yeah.
what I think is interesting about that is I want to I want to continue to understand from you where you, like, how this continued to evolve for you, because so back to, I leave the Christian school, I'm out of there. I'm now no longer being influenced on a day-to-day basis. I'm hanging out with a bunch of kids at public school, and then I go to college, and I'm free to do whatever I want. In this weird space, I still very much believe in God. I still think I'm a Christian. At this point, I just decide that I don't think some of the things I've been told are true. I don't think that the devil is a real person and I'm going to hell if I disobey God. I'm
Yeah.
deconstructing that. I realize, like, all of a sudden I realize that's ridiculous. Keep in mind, I'm like in my early 20s before I realized that's ridiculous. Like, I was still I'm praying every night before bed for forgiveness of my sins because I do not want to go to hell. I really think that's going to happen to me. So, and then I start researching the Bible, right? Because that's like I want to argue. I want to not, I want to be able to tell somebody that they're wrong, because at this point now I just want to be like, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Not that I'm right. I just want you to be wrong because you hurt me. That's like,
Yeah.
the immature mind of how do I process my feelings? So I'm researching now. I'm like getting deep into the history of the Bible and how it was written and when it was written and what's happened to it over the centuries. And I'm starting to realize and form belief systems that, you know, we've politicized and weaponized the Bible. We've altered it so many times. Massive books were left out of the canon, books that talked about the more spiritual or mystical side of Jesus because those didn't fit political agendas. The Bible was really curated and created very purposefully. So to me, right there, I was just like, nope, you can't call it the word of God then. This is, like, God didn't write this book. We literally created this for a purpose. I couldn't get my head around the idea that this could just be a book that has some nice inspirational content in it, because it became very false. It's just totally false. Just there's not, these are just, this is, man wrote this with mostly political agendas. We created holy wars over this context. So I start dipping into, yeah, spiritual realm as well, very softly, like hitting up the metaphysical section at Barnes and Noble softly. Like,
Uh-huh.
reading Paulo Coelho books, doing all the things you've said too, right? Like getting into the Reiki and tarot and crystals and the cards and all these things.
What's amazing there is that you're still seeking something.
Right, right, right.
Like you
And I
didn't just turn atheist.
no, and I knew I had the good sense, like there was always something in me that I never thought, like it never made sense to me that we would just die. Like I understood there was way too much spirit. There's no way we die and are buried in the ground and it's game over. I
Yeah.
knew intrinsically that wasn't it. I also have never worshipped another deity of any kind. Like there's never been another deity, god, goddess, whatever you want to say. I've never worshipped anything else ever again. That never made sense to me. I felt like picking an entity of any kind to like put on a pedestal and follow didn't feel right. And I then started like looking into the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which did not make it into the canon, did not make it into the final cut of the Bible, but were books that were being reviewed by the church and deemed heretical because they talked a lot about more of the mystical side of Jesus. And like, Jesus was a mystic, he was a healer, he was a fucking rebel. He
Hmm.
was super pro women, very inclusive, anti establishment, anti capitalist. Jesus was badass. He also didn't ask for this religion to be built around him. I think he would be disgusted to see what's been done in his name. Um,
But with these books, though, because I've heard people bring this up and I haven't researched it enough to have a solid opinion, but I've heard, do you know who Wes Huff is?
mhm.
He was on Joe Rogan recently. He's a Christian apologist, so his whole thing is like, defending Christianity, and he's like a Christian historian. And I heard him on his YouTube, and I can't remember now exactly what he said about it, but I think I want to say that somebody brought up these additional like books, and he had a historical analysis of why they weren't reliable to fit in. Like he wasn't just like, "Oh yeah, the church is just scared of it." He was like, historically, like as historians, we have to be able to verify like that these things could, and so he had like a list of reasons. I don't know if it was those books you mentioned specifically,
Yeah, I think
but
there
it
are
was
more than that.
like what something other people had said, like, well, this gospel or like this missing one, and he was like,
Mhm.
no, but like as historians you have to be able to, they have to fit, uh and like all the other books of the Bible have gone through that historical verification where we can verify them. So that's
Yeah,
like where what I wonder.
no, I have no idea. I think there's a lot of pieces we'll never be able to put in around that. But what I liked when I was reading both of those is that it just made room for a deeper relationship with the concept of God, because like I'm pretty sure it was the Gospel of Thomas, Book of Thomas, Gospel of Thomas, that talked a lot more about having a personal relationship, like being empowered to develop a personal relationship with God, Jesus, what have you, that could exist outside of the four walls of a church. Like it didn't require man-made leadership. Like you could self-guide and self-govern your spiritual health and wealth. And that, I was like, okay, I feel like if that was in fact if that was one of those verifiable canons, like that has a valid place. I think but again, that would not fit necessarily. Like if the Bible was to be a weapon, a political weapon, or, whatever else, that wouldn't fit, right? We need to have there has to be hierarchy, which is again like one of the foundations of the Christian religion that I don't love, is that there has to be like this hierarchy. There's always going to be somebody that's chosen to speak on behalf of God, and there's always going to be sinners, and I just
But is that an inherent hierarchy? Because, like, to me, something I don't like about the Catholic Church is that there's like the Pope, like there is this sort of
Yeah.
hierarchy, which Orthodoxy does not have. Um,
How I don't know anything about like
to be
orthodoxy.
honest, I don't know a ton either, but I just know that I don't know the name for it. I have to, but there's heads in Orthodoxy, of course, because there's
Okay.
like, there's priests and there's like they make decisions about translating the Bible or the church as a whole. So there are many different leaders. There's not like one like there is in Catholicism where there's the Pope.
The Pope. And then,
And
priests and yeah, everything else that
and
they.
to me I mean, I it feels that like sin has been talked about in so many different, like, because when you say there's sinners, were you putting that lower on the hierarchy? Like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, we're all sinners technically,
Right.
according, we're all sinners. I think I guess what I mean is more like you're sinning without, you're not on a path of redemption, right? Like you're not asking for forgiveness from your sins and continually trying to redirect and serve God. You're just sinning with reckless abandon and you don't care,
Right.
which is kind of like the bucket that I probably got put in and why.
Well,
uh,
I mean, we were
even
there.
if I
I mean, I
wasn't.
was there at one point for sure.
Oh,
This just
yeah, yeah.
welcoming of everything. But I guess the other thing I wanted to say about what you're with the books is like, uh, and I don't know if it's the ones you were talking about, so I'd have to look more. But because what this guy had said was like, um, it's not just that they can't meet the criteria of being true, but that they're like verifiably false, as in like somebody wrote them at a different time and made them up, and they can tell they're made up because of like certain historical details, like the name that they used wasn't used in this time period, so they can tell it was written at a
Right,
different
right.
time, like those kinds of things. And so to me, because I've talked to, and I don't, it might not be the ones you're saying, I don't know, but
Yeah, let me read it.
I've spoken to a lot of like people who are sort of new age turning Christian or sort of in this in between, and I see this, there's a big openness to maybe all these other, like the channeling of Mary Magdalene or like the whatever, like maybe these things can all be combined.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have such a huge skepticism lens now after my cult experience that I'm just like, I I want, what part of what draws me about Christianity is the historical aspect. Like I like the traditional feel. I like that it can stand up to questioning. Not that you were allowed to question, but like as like the fact that there are like Christian historians and people sort
Right.
of doing this research to like really question and critique and look at all these parts, and like can we verify, like we can verify that these certain things happened. And of course there are arguments, and like that's part of also what I would love to listen to is like a debate with like a Christian historian versus a historian who's like against it. Like I want to
Yeah.
hear all of that.
Oh, I would too. Right. That's super interesting to me because, like I don't have all of those facts either. Like I know, I mean, there's things that feel off to me, like the fact that the earliest writings that became the Bible were by Paul. They were like Paul's letters, and it now makes up much of what we call the Old Testament. These were written, wow, like 20 to 50 years after Jesus died. Paul did not know Jesus. He said he claimed to have had a vision of Jesus and then wrote these letters based on the vision. And then the rest of the Bible was written over the next several hundred years. And then they had to be reviewed and approved. But we sell the Bible as though it's like the word of God and holy truth. And what concerns me about that is how many gaps there could possibly be. Or like, I guess I have general mistrust of somebody writing a book and claiming like, this is absolute truth, like that. It doesn't settle well with me. Or then like fast forward to like the 1600s when King James radically altered the Bible to create the King James Version, that supported the monarchy in order to gain political affiliation for a holy war. I I hate that. Like I want there to be this like pure, beautiful version of the Bible that can be taken in stride, but I don't trust it anymore. I think I distrust how much we've changed it, how much maybe winners write the history books. What don't we know?
Hmm.
So it's like I am really interested in what you're saying, like deep historians, because that's the closest to at least like strong opinions we could possibly get.
Well, this is
Um,
making there he has on his YouTube. I haven't watched it yet, but he has a whole thing called "Can We Trust the Bible?" where he like goes. So maybe
yeah,
that's the thing to watch.
I gotta watch that.
Okay,
Get
all right.
school.
I don't know. I was under the impression that some of the books were written not right when it happened, but they were written where people who were alive when it happened were still alive, and so they were able to talk to the people who were there when it happened.
Like when what happened, like when Jesus was crucified, or
Yeah.
just when he was alive. I think there might be some possibility of that. Like Paul's letters, like those were written soon after Jesus died. So I would say it's like within 20 years, I want to say 20 to 40 years. So it's entirely possible that there were in fact people that were around validating facts, etc., and whatnot. Um, I don't know if you've seen versions of the Bible where the text is read when it's supposed to be this is what Jesus said.
No.
I have one, I don't know what version of the Bible that is, but I had it when I was a kid, or maybe it was just for like kids I don't know what the reason was now that I think about it, but there was red text that was supposedly direct quotes from Jesus, like that's how it was sort of pitched. I'm like, okay, like that's a liberty, but like that's fine, that's a liberty. But much of the rest of the Bible was written within hundreds of years after Jesus's death. So to my knowledge.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I
I'm
thought
not a
that it,
historian.
but I don't know. I mean, I think I agree with you. I think we are on the same page that, like, you would want it to be as historically accurate as possible.
Or just yeah, at least be transparent about what we're looking at. You know what I mean? Like I feel like we're not, I mean, again, I'm speaking from deeply from my personal experience. Like there was no part of my upbringing that left any wiggle room for possibility of I wasn't even told, like I remember asking why is there a King James version and why is there a New International version? And that was just like,
Don't even.
oh, one is just easier to read than others. I think that's what it was pitched
Okay.
because King James is very, very
That would piss me off
small.
too, because there's just like that's not honest. So you
Yeah.
wanna.
Like I just wanted those answers. So, when I was breaking out of this, there was definitely a brief period where I was like, fuck Christianity. Like, this is fucked up. But I also knew that it wasn't so much fuck Christianity. Fuck organized religion was really more what it was. Like, I really felt like humans put God in a box and we're destroying God. And I still feel like that in a lot of ways. I really feel like mass general religion does put God in a box. And I think that God and the concept of God is so much bigger and greater with so much more capacity to influence our lives than we recognize. I I don't, there are so many things that when I questioned and never got answers, I just that made more and more sense to me like, okay, well, God is all forgiving, yet God, just the classic arguments, but God lets babies die, or, God let me get raped, but also I prayed and God gave me a blessing. And just, I think that that's just not even the right way to, like, you're right. That's the man in the sky. He's not sitting there with a notebook trying to cross off his tasks for the day.
Yeah.
Oh, gotta bless this lady, and this guy's getting cursed. Like, that's just not which is why I think, too, we see a lot of the crossover from people either coming or going from religion, talking about the power being more like the universe or spirit or whatever the hell energy, because it takes away some of that personal human thing where we can't answer those types of questions. Like a God in the sky that's punishing or shaming or condemning people to hell or whatever, despite the fact that you followed the rules and became saved, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's just not even the right thing to do or logically explain. So I think that's why a lot of us adopt some of those terms because they feel more encompassing and they take God out of the church and take God out of the box and like open up the capacity of what this source could mean. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think a lot of that, like we talked about at the beginning here, is some of the same just different dialect, same impulse, different dialect.
I what's interesting, it's really fascinating because I'm trying to imagine it coming from your direction. Like, uh, because I was speaking with someone just recently who had the same sort of New Age to Christian as me, and I think there's something that is very compelling when coming from, and I mean you've had some the New Age background as well, but like coming from New Age into Christianity, for me, because I've been extremely reluctant, I think because of my cult experience, like I see certain influencers, people who just like jump headfirst into, I'm now a Christian, this is my identity. Everything the church says I just believe, I'm just in, I'm saved, I'm whatever, and I'm just like, wait a minute. Like, let me let me examine. I want to go
This is
slow.
like happening in mass. Like that's what this is happening a lot right now.
But I don't know that everyone, cuz I've seen people who have been more balanced as well. Like, so I think there are some people who are doing it like diving in like that. But then I
Right.
think there's others where there's a more nuanced perspective, but I think the cult lens is very useful, and if someone doesn't have that,
Yeah.
that can be very difficult because I think, like to me, coming from the new, so what's interesting in coming from the New Age perspective is like as I've been reading the Bible or learning things about Christianity, reading Christian books, I can see certain New Agey teachings that actually, came from the Bible or whatever, or are very
Right.
similar. And I'm like, oh, whoa. And to me, what I like more about Christianity is that there is a sort of structure, a tradition, I think there's more a sense of safety that in the New Age world, when we take these teachings sort of out of the context, um, like one I was discussing with a woman recently was she was saying, I forget what part of the Bible it is, but there's like an act as if, like if you act as if this, then you will receive, or something that can be kind of tied to manifesting, sort of.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, there's this overlap, or like one I was taught was like with Moses in the burning bush, the bush says something like, I am that I am, which some people have taken to mean like I have this power, but who I say I am, I can create. But New Age, I think, turns that into I'm God. I'm all powerful. And then I think open to me, I feel like it opens you up to all sorts of darker influences that you can't even tell are tricking you and are like, I just think there's a lot more danger there, and I feel a sense of like safety in the Christianity. Like, okay, I do have this power, but I'm not God. God is within me, but like I'm not God himself. And uh so yeah, and to me, like I also feel like, so I feel that there must be to me there must be an importance of the church because the church is so revered like in the Bible, and it's such a part of it. But I also feel kind of like, how much has the church been corrupted? And I want to find a church that I feel like really good in, where I'm allowed to ask questions. I'm allowed to really like have these kinds of discussions, and where that's a welcome part of the church.
Totally. And I know those churches exist. Like I have Christian friends now that like I'm like, wow, you are the Christians that I wish that I would have grown up around or known or been influenced by. Um, and I know that they do have or feel that homey community feel at home or at their church. And I think when the Bible references this church, it's really talking about fellowship and community, you know. The church, I think, especially I like never even really think about the Catholic Church because I think we all just kind of can understand that that has been corrupted over millennia. It's not, in large part, I think there's just probably a lot we don't know about the Catholic Church. I don't think the Catholic Church thinks they're evil. I don't think the Catholic Church thinks they've done harm, despite, you know, I don't know, all many things. I won't go down the road, but I think that churches in general have potential for narcissists to step into power. Again,
Definitely.
that's just like, kind of a part of it. It's not like, unless we're talking about like a mega church, it's not like there's extreme wealth in being a pastor or running a church. Like, unless again, we're talking about maybe the Billy Grahams or like, yeah, all these like mega church folks that are definitely doing things, not give us your money for God. I need a Cadillac. Um, so I think really the honest way to find that kind of community is what you're saying, like a smaller church or even just like a dedicated prayer group or something else where people can come and talk and ask these questions. And I do think those things exist. I think they're maybe a little bit fewer and further between because I think probably church is just stuck in a pattern a lot of times. We have a church, we're stuck in a pattern. We get a new pastor, we preach from the Bible, we talk on Sundays, people show up, there's coffee and donuts in the basement, see you next week. Um, but I hope that when you move, you find this place because I do think that there is you know, we know statistically people that have faith live longer. They tend to have fuller, richer lives. They're more involved in their communities. There are a ton of pros to having faith. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be like Christian God, Catholic God, whatever, there's no, it's faith, right? Um, and faith can also include questions. Faith can be where you're at in your journey right now. Faith can be where I'm at in my journey right now. Um, I don't sense that I'll swing back into the other direction. Like I'm probably, I have a Bible on my shelf. I'll always own a Bible. I have verses memorized that I love and reference sometimes. I honor the sacred. I've kept what feels good, and I've been able to over the years purge what feels bad. Still, as a whole, I'll never probably identify as a Christian because I think the mass majority doesn't represent. I don't want to be. It's like the same reason why I would never be like I'm a Democrat or a Republican because I don't really like what the hard. I just don't want to be associated with something. I don't like labels in general, probably. Maybe that's more what I'm saying, like not necessarily from a non-dualistic point, but like I just don't want to be bucketed into any kind of group. I just really want to be me and adopt stuff from a lot of different places, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. But that said, it's hard for me to find community around that because
Totally.
it's hard to enter women's circles and spiritual groups and talk about God or
Yeah.
even just use the word, right? You know what I mean?
Like
Like
the
play
worst
on.
word you can say.
Right. And that's a word I've probably just started adopting back into my life in the last couple of years. Like I'm comfortable with saying that again, even though I kind of always knew when I was talking about spirit, universe, whatever, yes, God. But I think I had to allow myself to do it to stop associating the word God with the guy in the sky. To stop associating him as Jesus's dad. You know, like I had to break that out of my system in order to come back and recognize that that's not what I think God is, but I do believe in God, if that makes sense in a way.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. So there are a couple of things I wanted to say. Um, One is so what's interesting to me is like, and again, I'm like newly back into this, so I'm not
Yeah.
settled on it. But what I feel is to me, Orthodox is the correct church. And then because it's the oldest and it's the most traditional. And then Catholicism comes from Orthodoxy and they're quite close. So I then see Catholicism as beautiful in its traditional thing, but I think it's deviated a little. And I mean, I agree that there's been a lot of corruption and issues. But then to me, like the rest of Christianity and like Protestant stuff and all, and then the stuff that you describe, and even like casual church, I have like a real resistance to, like, I'm just like, that feels wrong. Because to me, what draws me in the experience of like in my return to it and coming back to like Christianity and reading the Bible, like when I go to the Greek church, it feels ancient. Like it's all they do grow both Greek and English, but they chant like it's all chanted, the service. It's extremely like organized. It's just very traditional. It's like everything is followed. Um there's the incense. It's very sensual. It's very mystical. It feels like church to me. Like it just feels like something sacred is happening here and everyone's being quite serious about it in a lot of ways, and like that is beautiful. And I haven't spent much time in any sort of Catholic churches, but I imagine that they have a similar feel um in that traditional sense and ways. But then like I have a lot of resistance to the idea of um I don't know, I just can't imagine myself going to church where it's sort of like, well, we're all here to just discuss what we think about the Bible and about God. That doesn't appeal to me in the same way.
Mm.
I don't really
Yeah,
know,
that's more like prayer group or study group or something that
like,
not.
like it does appeal to me to be part of a Bible study group within an Orthodox church. Like when we have this sort of, and I'm not even saying what I feel drawn to right now is learning more about orthodoxy and kind of the rules of it and the way it's structured, and then kind of being like, do I fit here? And also like um because I agree with you that I think God, to me, there's a way that everything can sort of fit, but I also feel guarded. And so like how do I explain this? Like because I believe in reincarnation, for example. I feel like there's too many stories, too many
Yeah.
things. Like I would be hard pressed to think that that is not real in some way. But to me it's like, can that fit in somehow? Does it?
Yeah.
Like when reading any sort of scripture, you know, how does it fit in? What's interesting, like when I've read stories of like Orthodox priests or like Catholic priests, like older stories and their experiences with God, I see a lot of overlap in this New Age teachings of like surrendering or um like being in this sort of flow and alignment with life. I feel that what I have felt a lot of my life that I used to just call life and like my connection with life, I feel like I felt God in a lot of ways, but not all the way. I think I've been open to other nefarious things coming in, but largely protected by God as I like found my way. So there's just like a lot of moving parts, but I feel that I think something has been lost. Um to me, I like the label Christian because I feel that at its core, Christianity is good. And I think a lot of people saying they're Christian are not doing it right, for lack of a better. Like, I just feel like you're doing it wrong. Like,
A
you're
lot.
not,
I think a lot of
none of
it.
these people are doing it right. Like, you're not following it. And so I don't know where it all ends up structurally for me, but I feel that, like, there's a draw in me toward ancient tradition, structure, historical accuracy, and like I don't feel as comfortable. I think having structure is important because it feels that without structure on my own, it makes room for more things to come in that I might see as true that are not, like that are the devil in disguise, if you will.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Again, like coming from a cult experience, like it's smart to be in that state of questioning intentions and where things are coming from. And I like, it's almost like building your own version of Christianity, because with some guardrails, because like I don't you're going to be, I think you'll be hard pressed to find many traditional Christians that make room for the concept of reincarnation. I think it goes against a lot of things that are foundational to the path to getting to heaven. That's like the end goal is to be reunited in spirit with God. For a lot of religious folks, I don't know what the purpose of coming back here would be. And again, this is probably influenced by the fact that, like, you know, unfortunately, and why I think a lot of people also, like you said, end up maybe praising nature and things like that, which, yes, created by God. But I think because, and maybe why I specifically was like that too, because I was raised to believe that, like, this place kind of sucks. Like, it's almost like not punishment to be human, but like,
Yeah.
can't wait to get out of here to go be with God, because
Mm-hmm.
that's where I really want to be, not in this world filled with sin and pain and suffering, you know. Um, I wasn't raised to like appreciate God's wonder that he created here on this earth. Like that just wasn't also a, which, what a fucked up thing to do. If we're trying to lure people in, let's like talk to them about all the badass shit God did, not like not like build it around shame and you know,
Well,
punishment.
this is the other thing.
But
Is like this is what I wonder. Is like what's the traditional? Because to me, when I started reading the Bible, I was like, there's no shame.
no, that's not, that's like a Catholic guilt thing, right? Or like
Yeah, that's like
the
a
shame was
it
like,
seems like to me a corruption of what was
yeah, that's a
originally
corrupt. I
intended.
mean, I don't know if there's anything specifically that's like you should be ashamed of XYZ. You know, there's like rights, wrongs in the Bible, sure. But that, yeah, that's a good point. Shame was created as a, you know, here's a discomfort you're going to feel if you don't follow the Bible or our teachings, or, you know, whatever, align with what we're just telling you you need to do and how you need to behave and whatever. I think that's certainly, shame has to be man created. Like that's,
Well, I
we did
think
that.
like I mean, I guess I feel like it can serve a useful purpose, but what I mean in terms of shame is like I don't believe that God ever wants us to feel like we're bad and wrong
Mm,
inherently. Like I think there's like okay, yeah, like I did a bad thing, but that doesn't mean I'm bad.
no, I don't think that the essence of God would ever want that feeling to happen, period. I
Yeah.
mean, I just don't think, if we're talking about the concept of God as being all loving and all, you know, encompassing and that like fatherly type of figure energy, no, I don't think that that exists at all. And if we're, you know, again, if we're like looking to people that want to say, well, I just follow Jesus, I just follow Jesus' teachings, it's like, okay, then you better stand up for others. You better love everybody. Like that's literally the entire core message that Jesus was here on this earth to present, was like love, more love all the time. How much more can we love ourselves and how much more can we love each other? How can we understand people better? How can we make room for differences more? You know, that was what he completely dedicated his life to. But
And
yet,
he also got angry.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was human. He was
Mm-hmm.
a guy. He was
Yeah.
a guy that stood up to injustices in the world, you know. He did not enjoy, you know, he was very anti-establishment in that way. And, you know, he threw over tables. And I can't remember what the whole story was. I remember him like flipping over a table in a temple over like I think it was about like taxes or something. He was just like, you know, you're robbing the people, you know. He stood up for the prostitutes and the lepers, and he did, you know, he spoke parables all the time. And I think I love Jesus. I think the essence of Jesus is pretty fantastic. And going back to something you said a bit ago about, I think when we were talking about the gospels, like, is there anywhere that these things cross over? Like, I'm really into past lives and listening to stories about past life regression and things like that. I love that so much. And there's one book, I don't think it was a Dolores Cannon, it was somebody else that was like talking again, this is a channeling situation though, so red flags come up for me a little bit. But I've heard more than one person channel Yeshua, one of Jesus's many names, as like, the soul of Jesus coming through. I'm really curious about that. I would love to like look into this a little bit more, or same with like Mary Magdalene, and like talking more about, because that's the thing, like I do believe that we can access past versions of ourselves. I do believe in certain and very specific psychic connection and mediums and communing with the other side. Um, so why can't we talk to Jesus or Mary Magdalene? Like, I don't know. But then it's like, how do you even begin to trust what I don't know. I'm very skeptical
I
of,
mean, I don't believe any of those people at all. I don't know
no,
why anymore. I just feel
no.
like I just don't believe you until proven otherwise. I just feel like I just don't. But I guess what I mean with reincarnation is like and I don't know. Maybe I'll end up deciding that all the stories of reincarnation are satanic and just not real anyway. I could end up deciding that. I'm not sure. But what I feel is like there's also got to be our understanding of God and then like actual truth, because there's no way that we have capacity as humans to fully understand God. And so what it makes me wonder is like what's this guy's name? Have you heard of he created the my big toe theory? Have you heard
Uh-uh.
of that? It
Uh-uh.
sounds silly. What is his? Let me look it up because I think his name is maybe Thomas Campbell. Yeah, Thomas Campbell. My big toe. Toe stands for theory of everything. And I haven't gone deep into this either, but he was on Joe Rogan recently. And what I found interesting about his he's a physicist,
Okay.
and his approach, like he's created this idea of consciousness where he sees it in his mind as like a virtual sort of simulation. Like we're in this sort of simulation and we're all sort of almost like characters in a video game and we're part of the larger consciousness. And the point of the game is to move farther away from entropy, which is fear, and more into love. And the way that he describes it, he has said that like both Christians and atheists are like, oh, I find myself here. Like I see, like I agree with what you're saying because this proves what I believe. And so I don't know if it does all the way deep down for me, but I feel almost like we are also on this trajectory of becoming more and more like computers. Like we're bringing technology more and more into our world. Some people think that's anti-God. I'm not convinced. Maybe it is. Maybe we're all just doing things wrong and headed down a terrible path. But also, what if it's not? Like, what if, because there's a lot of truth also in like math, right? And physics and like the way that these things. And so to me, I wonder if it's possible that um like I am sort of playing Demetra. I mean, I think anyone maybe could agree that I'm not like Demetra, my idea of myself, like ego. That's not really me. And so if like the goal of life is to sort of move closer to God, move closer to love, could that be like that all love when we get to all love, is that heaven? I don't know. I just wonder if like it feels to me that it must all fit together in some way that we cannot comprehend. Like I feel the computer stuff must fit somehow. And certain new agey things like the reincarnation or the whatever, like I feel like perhaps it fits in. Cause also like, and I don't know, maybe I guess Christians, especially like you grew up and would say that like any sort of drugs or whatever is satanic. But I also wonder when people do take certain like I've taken acid in the past and like when I saw all these things, these like hallucinations, it was very clear to me the next day that like what I had seen existed. Like it wasn't just I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
make it up. I
yeah.
just
Like,
saw through a
bait.
different filter.
Right, right.
you know? And so then I'm like, well, what are we in? Like, you know, what are the bees are seeing things differently. We don't
Right.
even know what we're in. Like this, like, you know, I see the computer, I see the room. We know now that these things aren't even solid.
That we, yeah.
So it's just kind of to me, like, I know what draws me to the Bible and what draws me to Christianity is like, I feel this sense of peace. Like, that's been the main thing that has made me curious to explore more is like when I started reading the Bible and I started praying to God and opening myself up, I started feeling like different than I had ever felt in New Age stuff. It just felt like, oh, this is right. And it also felt like the most tender, loving part of me that I feel has been always there and is like the purest essence of me feels very at home in Christianity, where it's like, oh, I'm allowed to be good and like want to be good and loving to myself and kind. Like, that was always so uncool. And like, that was like the least cool thing you could be was like sensitive and tender and loving. And so, what I've also found in myself as I've come back to into Christianity is like this like, oh, it's like beautiful to want to be pure and loving and like to have that in my heart. And I felt safer than to let that out and like let that be seen and just like have that be a part of me. Um and that feels so much better and truer than like trying to act in all these cool ways, listening to this like dark music and being all these like sexual things. Like I feel like that was
Like
never
a whole
really
version of yourself.
yeah,
And
it's like that was never really the core of my heart. You
yeah.
know, it was like the world getting put on, like me trying to exist in the world and like, yeah.
I wonder if, because like you said, I too have seen like what I felt like was almost a huge rush over the last probably year or so of women that I would describe as having been more of a new age spiritual vibe back to Jesus or Christianity or God or whatever version that they're currently exploring. And sometimes it's been, which like the reason that I very much appreciate you is you're thoughtful, you are open to change, you know you're always going to change as a person and you're honest about that. Whereas a lot of people are like, what I'm telling you right now is the truth because I'm telling it. And I'm like, really? Because 6 months ago you were practicing dark sex magic and like having a weird, if we can't be open about the fact that we're never going to be the same people every day, like, what are we even doing here? I saw there's this one woman who I'm friends with and I love dearly, and she just became very deeply religious. And she's like, well, Halloween's my favorite holiday, but I guess I can't celebrate it now. And I was like, okay, well, you can, like, you still take your kid trick or treating. You don't have to hate Halloween as like you know what I mean? Or like, I was like, I had to comment. I just couldn't help myself. But I was like, so like Jesus wasn't born on Christmas. I just want to make sure that we're like clear on that you're not are you still doing the Santa thing? She's like, well, yeah, of course I love Santa. I'm like, okay, then just let yourself pick and choose. You don't have to but I wonder if there is I'm continually trying to figure out what the nudge is happening here because for me, growing up, it was only cool to be Christian. And then for a really long time, it was very cool to not be Christian, as we're like talking about, right? And it's not that I'm like saying it's cool to be Christian again, but I'm curious because I think a lot of people are feeling that way. And I want to know, and this, from many people, like you included, like, does this happen because of spiritual fatigue? Like, is it exhausting to feel like, it's like a lot of the spiritual world is like self-empowerment. I am God. I can do anything. I can heal myself. I can blah, 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 all this stuff. Like, that's a huge fucking burden. Like, Jesus, take the wheel, Like, is there like a part of that you think that happens where it's like it feels safe and good to be able to like drop your burdens in a way? Do you think that's a piece of it?
I think that, well, I think a couple things. First of all, for me, a draw was that I started meeting Christian friends who were thoughtful and smart. Like I didn't really have any Christian friends, first of all. And then over the last couple of years, like I just happened to meet, you could say maybe God put them in my path.
Yeah,
Uh,
perhaps. Yeah.
but like happened to meet, in particular, one couple who we met through like a business networking thing Jordan is part of. And they had the woman grew up Catholic and her husband had kind of recently become Christian. But she grew up super Catholic. Like you grew up super evangelical or whatever. Like she was like super Catholic, had kind of moved away because she went through a divorce and was kind of like, I'm questioning, and then has come back, but in a more, uh, you know, not all, I think not all as all encompassing as her childhood.
Edges a little bit.
Yeah. But I became friends with her, and talking with her was sort of my first, like, I was like, oh, she's really smart. Like, she's not a dumb Christian, but like, I always thought like these Christian women must be dumb. I was like, oh, she's really smart. She's really
Yeah.
thoughtful. She seems like very grounded. Her life is very together. And there's like this peace. And I was like, interesting. And then the more people I started to just kind of see that were Christian, I was like, they have this sense of peace, and I envied it. I was just like, I don't know why, like, I don't have that. And I didn't know what exactly what it was, but I was like, I know I don't have it. And for a while, I was like, I have it too. Or like, I'm the
Tap
same,
into it.
or they
Yeah.
don't really have it. I'm smarter than they are. And that's why I don't feel it in the way they do, because they're just dumb. So they just feel it like they're just, I don't know. I just like had all these reasons. And then, but the other thing I think on a societal level that I think is happening is like, uh, I think that societally we've been going down a very bad path, and like our birth rates are dropping immensely. People aren't getting married as much anymore. Women are getting way older before they're getting married and having children. A lot of women aren't having children. Like all these things where we're moving away from the family, like the American family, like America being as it was. And I think that there's a swing back to traditional family values, like like I feel like we really swung into this like free sex, free, birth control, abortion, like all this liberation. And I think that a lot of people are seeing, and what I've heard is like a lot of people being like, this isn't working as a society. Like, not that it can't work for any individual person, but like as a whole for humanity, this isn't working well for us. And I think that I've seen people argue too from a more philosophical standpoint that they don't like they might not be super religious themselves, but they think that like Christian values are what will bring humanity forward, and like help save humanity essentially. So I think there's also this swing. I think it's also like a anti-feminist, like we went super feminist and now we're like, wait a minute, we've lost things. And I think that Christianity holds a lot of these values. And so I think that is also part of the draw of it. I think that's what made me and Jordan like more open to it, was like as we started to become more conservative, it was like, oh, and like me, when I started to read the Bible, I'm like reading Proverbs and I'm like, this is very good advice. And I'm like, I kind of wish I never had sex with anyone besides Jordan. And I was talking to a woman who I'll have on the podcast right before you probably. She was saying how now she's part of this church where like, and I don't know, maybe you've experienced this differently, but like she's part of this church where I think she's the evangelical as well, but she said she knows families who for generations they've been in that church, and the children have followed the sort of church's rules, and like the parents got married at 20 and they had kids, and then those kids got like saved themselves till marriage, got married at 20 and then had kids. And she said when they do a thing where they like share all their traumas together, and she said when she shares her life, she like everyone's like whoa, because like she had like such a past. And she's like, and then they share, and she's like, some of these women like don't have trauma. Like they just like grew up in a loving family that believed in God, and then they got married and had kids young, and then those kids got married and I was like, whoa, how could that even be possible? Like, that to me that's so unfathomable. And I was thinking like, had I could have seen like if I had grown up with these values that and they were kept intact and they were not culty, but they were like there, I think I would have experienced so much less pain and struggle. And like maybe that's what it's meant for.
I think there's something to that. I also like, so, sex before marriage was obviously like a big no. Everybody was like wearing purity rings and taking purity pledges and all this shit and, finger banging after school still. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
whatever. But there were kids at my Christian school that like, they'd been like dating through high school or they're like junior, senior year, and then would literally get married immediately after high school so they could have sex.
Yeah.
Like that was a very real thing. And some of those, like I can think of many people actually that did this, and some are still married, some totally are. And they are exactly what you said. They just never left their hometown. They stayed near their families. They got married and had kids. Some definitely took different paths, as just any roll of the dice will happen. I do think there is some simple beauty to that. Like, I think that I wanted that for a long time because my parents were high school sweethearts and got married young. And I thought that was so cool that, I would have my parents for so much longer and I would have kids when I was young. But I would have missed so many life experiences had I never left my hometown, had I never dated some of the men I dated, had I never taken some of the trips I'd taken. I never would have met some of the interesting people I've met. So I'll never know what it was like on the other side. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I definitely can see the pros of that, but I wouldn't trade the life experience of exploring the world and meeting the vast swath of people I've met for something safer and cozier, I don't think. But that's easy for me to say because I'm not on the other side. So I
Well,
don't know.
that's what I wonder about because I
Yeah.
don't know the answer for myself for
Yeah.
sure.
I don't. Yeah. And we
Because I
won't. We
feel
can't. Yeah.
like I wouldn't having the life I have now, I would not go back and change it because I have
Sure.
Jordan. I have like all
Yeah.
these things I
It
love. I'm
all
like,
ended
this
here.
is the
Yeah.
best. But had I not like I don't I think about all the life experiences I've had in my 20s and all of these things and I'm like, was it really worth it? Like I don't think like and for me though, I really want to have children. Like I want to have a family. And now I'm like to me now I'm like this is the only thing that matters and I don't care about all these experiences I got to have because to me I'm like the values place I've come back to personally is like I don't know that anything matters more than love and family and like creating a family and children and having a husband that loves me and like this I just feel like all the experiences and exploration I could do I don't think could touch that love.
And probably not. Like, let's say not. But I wonder if then on the other side, you would always wonder. Like my friends that are my age that had kids really young, they're just like, God, it must be nice. It's just the grass is always greener, I kind of think too.
In our current society, I think, though.
No, yeah, yeah,
Because, like,
yeah,
I think
exactly.
I agree with that. If I had gotten married at 19 in our current culture, I don't think I would have lasted. I think it would have been a mess for me. I was too, like, rebellious and, like, oh, I want to know everything and see everything. But I think if I had had different values instilled and kind of not been in a culture that was so anti-sacrilegious, like, I I wonder. Like I think my personality, I see these Amish women who are like they grow up with all this community and this whatever. And I know it can be rife for abuse in places like that, but I also wonder like if I had grown up like that, even me, I think I might have been really happy in a culture.
I can see that.
I don't
I
know.
mean, I get the sentiment around that. And I think too, like you talking about like having something kind of like a little bit structured and ancient. I think that provides a really nice grounding in a world that is going very, very fast. I find myself often wishing I had, it's like first world problems, but like less choice,
Yeah,
decisions to
it's a
make,
real thing.
less stimulation constantly. I mean, I work online. I'm behind this computer screen the majority of every day of my life. When I am not working, I don't want to have a cell phone in my hand. I don't want anything to do with it. I want my hands in the dirt. I want to be jumping in cold water. I want to be outside, you know. And the way our world is moving, it's continuing to progress towards the yes, AI evolution, automation, faster, more, better, stronger, all the, blah, 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 blah. It's so disorienting on our nervous systems that I think we're all starting to feel a desire. A lot of us are starting to feel a desire for something more grounded and stable.
Mm-hmm.
And God fits perfectly in that. I mean, it's a ultimate pillar, a plank, like again, just coming back to, or whether it's God or not, faith, right?
Yeah.
And so when you look at faith-based systems, there do tend to be certain values, again, going back to small community, feeling safe, having family close, those types of things. It all makes sense. I mean, I sometimes my like fantasy world is like a cabin in the woods and I'm churning butter and picking berries. You know what I mean? Like just to be just to go back in time a little bit. And so, I see more and more where you're coming from in that path, especially as where you are now, like preparing to have a family and deep into research of how you want to shape the world that those kids will grow up in.
I think the choice is a big thing. Like it's really overwhelming to have, and working online too gives you even more choice, right? It's like we have so much. My whole life I was so oriented to like freedom, and I think Jordan was too. Like I want to have the most freedom possible to make the freedom of all these choices. And then it was like, yeah, it's like the preparation to have a family. It's like, wait, what do I care about? Because we moved here, which is quite rural, and I had that fantasy of like, I want to bake bread, I want to, live off of nature, I want to go back in time. And then I was like, living here, I was like, I don't actually know if this is really my full dream. I kind of think like certain aspects of it I've enjoyed, but like I do not want to be doing farm chores all day every like it's not really me. And
Yeah.
I wanted it to be me, but like I didn't even I don't like having all this land to take care of all the time. And we don't even have that much land. We have half an acre. It's not like a big portion. But
Yeah.
it's like because we're on the creek, we get so many slugs and the garden, there's a big garden, it's overwhelming. The blackberries always come. Like there's always things to do. And it's like I don't want to. Like I just I think I still kind of think I'd like to have chickens one day, but I don't know. I don't when we were composting our poop for a while, it's like, ooh, off the grid. We were never off the grid, but like that's a thing you might do off the grid. It's like,
Yeah.
it was fun for like 6 months and then it was no longer fun. It was just like, I'd love to not have to do this chore ever again. And we're both at this point because uh, we had the composting toilets and now we have incinerating toilets. And we were like, oh, who needs water toilets? For like a year, we were like, water toilets are so weird. And now I'm just like, we were both like, I'd love to poop into water and just
I just want to,
get
yeah.
away. Like, I'm just so tired of this maintenance of everything. Like, I just don't want it. And so there is this, like, it's been like, what do I value? And then I told you before we got on this call, like, considering all the states, it was like, we could live anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's really overwhelming. And then it's like, where do I want? And then I'm like, okay, well, we want to move to the States. So what state? And then I'm considering all of the states and I'm looking them all up. What do people think about living in each state? And I'm like, does it matter that like the place meets all these criteria? Like, what am I living for? And this is like the God question for me is like, if I'm living for me in alignment with God, then it's like, what do I really like? What matters? And then it's like, what matters to me then is love and family. And like, it matters less Demetra's personal likes and dislikes about everything. Like it just feels like, and of course those matter at all, but like I'm sort of like, I think what I value most is love. And so I'd like to just go and be near people that I love. And the other stuff, like, I don't know. Do I need to be in the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my life? I don't think so. It's sad. I'll be sad to leave certain aspects and like, but is that like my value? I don't think that that's the most, it's not really making me happy. Like that's not really what I want deep down. But it's distinguishing between all those things. And when there is so much choice, it's like we can work from anywhere. We can go wherever we want. We could live wherever we want. It's like and then everybody else is doing certain things, right? It's like, oh, should we go move to Austin? Everybody's moving to Austin. Like all these entrepreneurs are in Austin. We could have all these cool friends. And then it's like, what matters? I don't know. I'm sure, like you said, I mean, I know for sure I seem to massively change my mind quite often. So I have changed too many times to be ever certain of like who I'll be in the future. Like you just can't know, but it's like I don't know. Currently that's how I feel. I'm just like,
That's beautiful self-awareness. And I also think that like taking on any kind of religious pursuit while having self-awareness is incredibly valuable because it will help anyone avoid falling into a place that is like psychologically damaging or controlling or anything else like that because I don't think that the core of God has anything to do with control, shame, guilt, sin, any of it. I don't think that that is what any of it is. I think that the concept of God and all of this is to empower us not to be our own gods, but to be the best versions of ourselves and to enjoy the human experience with a little more ease. Like it's hard to be human. We're here just having a tough go at it and doing the best we can to find joy in whatever ways we possibly can. So I think anybody that has faith in something somewhere somehow that helps them achieve that is on the right path.
yeah. Yeah. It's got to be thoughtful. Like you said, I have seen people who like I found the truth and it's the only truth and I'm like red flag.
Yeah,
I don't know.
doubt it.
I can't I can't quite go there with you, but I can I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely I was nervous to tell people that I was Christian. I just felt so, it was such an ego blow. It was just such a like, I do not want to be one of these people. I don't want to tell everybody I'm Christian. I don't want everyone to think I'm now like a new age to Christian person. And like, uh, but the conversations I've been having have been so much fun with people now, like from it and just hearing everyone's like journeys and what they're considering and like where they've been led. And it's just, I love it. So I'm just like so curious to see what continues to unfold.
Yeah, I'm excited to listen to more of your pods, read more of your content, and yeah,
See.
root you on in your journey.
Is there anything you want to share that we didn't get to touch on? Like anything about any of these topics that you want to finish with?
Um, no, I think that feels pretty complete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a place I can point people to? Like, is there anything you want me to plug, or are you, I don't know. I keep forgetting to ask people sometimes because I keep talking. Sometimes I just talk to like regular people who don't have any sort of like website or anything.
Yeah.
And then other times I'm talking to people who like have their online
Like I wrote
businesses.
a book. What?
I'm like, are you? Yeah.
I'll think of that today. I have a couple places I could send, but let me decide and I'll send a link over to you if I
Okay.
have somewhere I would have you push.
All right. And I'll put it in the show description if anyone wants to like go there.
Cool.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank
I
you.
think that these kinds of conversations are so much fun because it's like uh not that we were really massively disagreeing, but it's just nice to be like figuring out where do we meet, where do we not, where do we overlap, where do we like differ. I just like that. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful to you for reaching out.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you. It was fun. I mean, fun to revisit things that sometimes I'm just like, what the fuck was that happened with that? Yeah, yeah. It's just it, yeah. I appreciate the good conversation for sure.